Well, that was a chip show.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe, leave a review. Thanks for your support. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Will the Bruins have an interim head coach when they come back home? That's why you might want to go get a ticket and see the Bruins in action. Who knows? Let's react to that crap fest that was the Saturday night game against Arizona State, where there's been discussion about who was the last one on the Chip Kelly Island. There's many other beloved UCLA outlets who we could all describe ourselves as on the last part of the Chip Kelly Island, the most positive of all of us, slowly falling to what some might say the fired Chip Kelly bandwagon. And I'm not sure that there's anybody in greater than a handful of people that are on the keep Chip Kelly bandwagon at this moment after what they did against Arizona State. It's okay, yeah, you lose at home, you have a third-string quarterback, and but Schlee can do things, and the Bruins still had a lot of weapons available to them, and Arizona State was more depleted on the road after getting blitzed the week before. Blitzed. Let's hit it. Oh, my God. That was so terrible. Absolutely terrible. All right, let's talk about key number one. Don't mess around. Okay, my key to these games, this game against Arizona State, do not mess around and keep them in this game. Do not mess around. Well, what did the Bruins do? They missed it on fourth down 3 times when the game was still on the line. 3 times they failed to convert on fourth down. Fourth and short, deep in ASU territory multiple times, and just like, oh, let's do something where we're going to try and punch them in the mouth, knowing that they're a semi-decent run defense, right? The Arizona State Sun Devils, with their offensive line, that's just probably not the best in recent memory. Let's go right at them. Stuffed. Did we learn our lesson? I don't think they did. So let's get to the overall performance for the offense. That just was absolutely frustrating. I thought, and I jokingly said to who I was with at the game, what if they try to break the Michigan record of how many plays you're going to run in a row to end a game from start to finish to win a football game without throwing a pass? That was the joke when it was pretty clear and evident that Colin Schlee was going to start this game and that Dante Moore and Garbers just were not healthy enough to start this game for the Bruins. And yet, still, the Bruins should have been able to win this game. Maybe you wanted to mix in Chase Griffin to get a little crazy and throw the ball at some aspects of this game. I would have been okay with that. Still, this was absolutely ridiculous. You fumble the football, fourth and short, multiple times they failed. The Bruins running the football, 183 yards, almost 5 yards a carry on 37 carries, yet they couldn't complete it better than just over 50% of the time. A total of 11 completions for 21 attempts, 117 yards, and it took a late touchdown, a later fourth quarter touchdown to even get to that part of the game. The UCLA offense, you can't get a grade higher than an F, where they generated a measly 300 yards of offense or so, right, against Arizona State, whose defense is fairly scrappy. The Bruins, 300 yards of offense, okay, but you could have done a lot more. They were the better football team. They clearly were the more healthy football team, and they just no-showed. They couldn't get it done on third downs. When hey, we're going to struggle in third and long situations, let's avoid that at all costs and give our passing game much more of a chance to be successful than forcing, hey, third down, let's just willy-nilly do some dumb things. They were just mind-boggling things that made no sense in this game for UCLA. And at some point, the longer you keep the underdog in it, a very angry underdog that was coming to play for just a big win on the road in their last ever trip to the Rose Bowl's conference opponents. Kenny Dillingham was like, hey, We're going to do swinging gate. Google the offense and figure things out. That's what Kenny Dillingham was doing, right? Chip Kelly, I don't know what he was doing. Took the blame for the loss. And, yeah, I understand that there's struggles, and there's been struggles all year at the offensive line. And this isn't a Bruins team that probably as good as we had hoped for when we saw this team had a chance to have a higher ceiling, much higher than anticipated, considering the schedule. And after it's all said and done, we looked at, there's back-to-back Arizona games. We know they're probably going to lose one of those games. And in the end, UCLA lost them back-to-back on the road against a very good Arizona team, and then at home to a very not-so-good Arizona State team where UCLA somehow looked like the way worse team by just continually shooting themselves in the foot and doing dumb things all day. They were hampered, of course, by a little bit of injuries. Some just ineptitude on offense. They just straight did not look like a team that deserved to be in the Rose Bowl and to win that game. They frankly didn't for a full 60 minutes. The urgency, everything just really wasn't there. I know there was effort. The players were putting their hearts out, and the coaches did their best to source, but it was unacceptable what went on Saturday night. It's not like Arizona State flukily won. It wasn't like it was a straight out fluke the way the things played out. I know they looked goofy with the swing, everything going on, but by no means was this a fluke. It was certainly a bit of a choke on UCLA. It was absolutely a masterclass of doing the best they could for Arizona State and playing a fantastic game. And it took UCLA to be nearly at one of their all-time worst moments to lose that football game. And Arizona State played with everything they had. The Bruins just didn't want to match that. Offensively, very frustrating. You're going to get an F because you can't score 7 points at home against Arizona State. And yes, UCLA has found ways to struggle. It's not like they missed extra points or field goals that have kept points off the board, or they, stalled. They did stall. They found ways to be ineffective in the red zone, near the red zone, driving when they got past the 50, right? 3 times in the first half, they tried to do big things, right? You had a 4th and short got stopped. You actually got a semi-decent punt return from Loya because they had a chance to return it with Arizona State punting from their own end zone. And it just very frustrating. I like the option plays when he had Colin Schlee going to the outside, finding Keegan Jones, who had 3 carries for 50 yards. Maybe you could have done things that were more successful more often. Chip Kelly will say, second guessing, and hindsight is 20/20. Sure, but you could have seen that at halftime and done more adjustments to score coming out of the locker room as opposed to just sitting there and blowing this game with a loss, right? You're not game one, Mick Cronin, UCLA men's basketball trying to figure it out, and you blow one at home against a sucky team. UCLA ended up winning games, even though they haven't looked impressive in men's basketball. UCLA football has lost games despite having a semi-more impressive roster than we realized coming into the year. And in the end, it's going to cost them a chance to even play in a Pac-12 championship game where maybe in a different year they could have. In the next year, there won't be any more. And it was just frustrating. An F, just absolutely an F. There's no way it's a C, a D. You can't do that. UCLA's just overall worst performance in a long time. Even the game against Utah, I know there can be some discussion and disagreement about there was lack of adjustments. They just looked like they couldn't do anything against Utah way back at the end of September. And then against Arizona State at home, they just looked lifeless. Difference when you're playing with a young quarterback and a quarterback who just can't throw the ball as successfully as the other two in Schlee, but he can absolutely run it. Why not play to his strengths like Arizona did, trying to play to their strengths while avoiding a major weakness against UCLA's strength, the D-line? How do the Arizona State Sun Devils do that? We're going to talk about that next because the offense was an F. I'm tired of talking about it. It's going to get weird, just like Chip Kelly was with the reporters asking him about his job security. Let's get over it. Bueno, no bueno. You shouldn't have to worry about buying tickets to your next big event. Maybe it's that battle for the victory bell, right? Maybe you don't want to sit there and you're like, you know what? Despite all that's going on with the coaching and everything in between, you want to support the Bruins as they take down that ugly team on the other side across town. And you're like, I need a last-second ticket. I need a last-second deal. Those ticket prices had skyrocketed. Well, with Game Time, they've got last-minute tickets, flash deals, zone deals, just to get us making sure we got Bruin support against USC in the Coliseum. Game Time is the place that they can help you find it. They can save money on ticket. They've got deals on tickets right up to the start of the event. Even though there might be freeway closures, you can still get to the Coliseum and we can cheer on the Bruins to take down the Trojans. So you can find your exclusive flash deals, zone deals. You pick the section. Game Time picks the seats. You can get an average of 18% savings. All you got to do is download the Game Time app, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase after creating an account, and then again, use the code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDCOLLEGE, LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off after creating an account. Terms apply. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Cruising on, second segment for Locked On UCLA. If you wanted me to go spew fire Chip Kelly, goofiness, nonsense, everything, proudly say it out loud, we will get there. We'll get there. We just have to still fully review why we're here. Why is UCLA here after the Arizona State game specifically? It's not just it's not the fact that they lost. It wasn't like it was some thriller or something stupid happened, like they blocked 30 punts in a row and it led to a touchdown every single time. They flat out got outplayed, outclassed, and lost at home in a game that they should not have lost. Arizona State played well. It's not like UCLA missed out, or yeah, they did. They made a couple of dumb plays, which is why we're talking about the defense in this one. Penalties played a role in stupid things on the field. It's one thing to hold somebody for a pass interference. It's one thing to, I've talked about my displeasure for the targeting rule, how it affects guys' availability to play. I know it's about player safety. That's what we're talking about. But the fact that they had an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty that just literally cost them the game, they could have still squeaked by. And even the most positive Chip Kelly lovers like myself prior to the unsportsmanlike penalty that literally won the game for Arizona State, and probably other UCLA pundits and writers and everything, right? After that, just that sheer mistake, which we've seen again now time and time again that have cost the Bruins, that was just the last stand. When not only did the offense do nothing, and it's not like Danton Lynn truly got outclassed, right? It's not like the defense completely blew this game. The Sun Devils didn't put up 38 or something. But the fact that they were able to move the ball, have a 99-yard drive for a touchdown, swinging gate, while UCLA couldn't do anything with a lot more players to their disposal, more offensive linemen, regardless of if they're much aligned or not. The swinging gates for more formation, right? Oh, let's Google this on a Tuesday and beat Chip Kelly on a Saturday. Is it going to be a meme forever for Kenny Dillingham beating an all-time pause. I'm not going to say UCLA. That was a mistake from my part. An all-time innovator, offensive wizard from back in the day in Chip Kelly. And that's how he got beat at home at the Rose Bowl with a much better team, a good defense, and the Bruins just couldn't go out and beat the Sun Devils. That's what made it even more of a mockery for the Bruins on Saturday night. It's not like the defense completely gave it in the second half in that fourth quarter when they needed a stop and they got it and they just completely blew it up on one unsportsmanlike conduct call. That's when it really lost it for all of us, because already there's the talk from the defensive side of things about interviews before the game, disunified, divisive, those words being thrown out prior, during, or after practice for availability from players, meaning that there's more things going on. So the fact that Arizona State was able to move the ball, you had Scadaboo with the play action pass for a touchdown. You had Jalen Conyers, who was as a tight end taking early snaps in the game. You had their third string quarterback, who last year was a more key part of the Arizona State offense. Bourguet come in and do just enough, despite throwing a terrible interception, where they would go, all right, we're going to have 5 linemen to the left, a couple of receivers to the right, and just throw up bombs 50 times and just get a couple of dink and dunk first downs. Absolutely frustrating. Absolutely frustrating. Which makes me grade the defense much worse than what they actually played, in my mind. Because if we look at it, the Bruins still forced a turnover. I wanted turnovers. I wanted one for them to run the ball if we're going back to keys. The Bruins did that, but still not enough. And 3 forced turnovers. I wanted multiple. They could have and should have done more of that. In the end, they played sloppy, 86 yards of penalties, which was the worst by far all season in terms of impact, importance, and when they happened. The amount, I believe, was the most, just off the top of my head. UCLA just looking absolutely ridiculous and foolish in that game. Arizona State converted more third downs, more fourth downs than UCLA did. They did crazy things just to be competitive, to have a chance in this game, and boy, did they ever. And despite UCLA doing what they do best, hold an offense to only, 3 points in the first half, then giving up a couple of touchdowns in the third and fourth quarter. The fourth quarter was just the backbreaker because they'd already given up after the multiple first downs, even though the game still kind of hung in the balance at that point, with most of the fans heading for the exits. It was just frustrating. The defense is going to get an F grade for me. They don't deserve an F grade. They've been absolutely fantastic. Large portions of this season, they played their hearts out to keep them in this game. But just the mistakes that were made, the fact that they gave up a couple of touchdown drives, longer drives, they're going to get an F. Because if we're going to call for Chip Kelly to lose his job, if he's going to sit there and say, as a coaching staff, we didn't prepare our players, if there's already a disunified front and they couldn't figure out the swinging game, which nobody is probably going to use against UCLA again, unless Lincoln Riley does something ridiculous with Caleb Williams. He's already done simple things like that and try to win a game on a 2-point conversion. So we'll see what happens in the crosstown rivalry matchup this week. The defense gets an F. Considering how that drive ended. They had to stop, and then they let them keep going and score another touchdown when they just practically gave up on the field in front of our own eyes. They played hard. A lot of these guys, bounce back guys that are getting new opportunities all over the field that individually deserve our praise and love. Danton Lynn might get paid handsomely to go elsewhere, maybe handsomely, dare I say, by UCLA to stay and become the head coach, or maybe be a defense coordinator and stay with the new head coach, or stay next year, whatever it may be. But they get an F just for that sheer mistake. And everybody makes mistakes. Players, college, everybody makes mistakes. They lose their cool. But that was more indicative of what's been building and boiling over than a once-over in this 17-7 loss at home to Arizona State. You can't just give 2 touchdown drives to a team that is absolutely depleted, has no way of protecting against them. I know they did things to make sure that did not happen. It was still an embarrassment. The defense did not play absolutely horrifically. They don't deserve an F. But sometimes, you go to school and you have all the kids or students, and you maybe have a professor, and you're like, who is that a-hole professor that's just going to give you an F just because? Today, that is me. I will be that teacher, that professor. It's like, you didn't do horribly, but there can be much better done with this. And that was an F. F, and special teams didn't really get a chance to blow things over. We saw a nice little run back from Loya, which honestly we didn't realize if he didn't run it back for a touchdown, that possibly cost UCLA the game. Not that he did anything wrong with the punt return, but the Bruins really needed that to go in the end zone and not fall short. Otherwise, hey, I don't know. Special teams didn't blow this game. They'll get a C-. They've been failing most of the year because they can't return and do anything this year, but a C- because they didn't cost them the game. Maybe they're afraid to kick field goals. That's valid for Chip Kelly to feel, kind of his problem if he doesn't truly believe in either of his kickers, although that's more of a problem across college football than we realize. Kickers in the kicking game, that's been issues for a while. That's why only a handful of NFL kickers make it and then get tossed around back and forth. UCLA, frustrating. F. What's next? What's next for UCLA? Chip Kelly's not getting fired before the USC game. Highly doubt it. It could happen. I don't think so. Unless something breaks. From now when I record or anything. Highly doubt it that he gets fired. So what's next? Let's talk about it for UCLA and for us. You know, you and I, we spend a lot of time talking together, and we get fired up over wins, or in this case, a loss, and who starts and sits, whether coaches should keep their jobs or not. But I'm thankful for the connection we have, even if we're disconnected or more unified than ever. And I want our chat to be a little more personal because I just learned with Jace Medical, you can get a 1-year supply with ED medications. You know what the means? Bring on extended travel. Bring on the next natural disaster, or what it also means is supply chain issue. No need to worry, my friend, if you can't refill your prescriptions, because it's possible due to Jace Medical. Go online at jacemedical.com to receive a 12-month supply on daily medication using the promo code LOCKEDON for a discount as well at checkout. Verified customers said they're thankful for their service. Supply chain issues caused me to cut pills in half, and then they were able to order most of their daily meds for a year's supply. Antibiotic kits, they felt secure, and prices are lower than local pharmacies. It's highly recommended by a verified customer about Jace. Someone you love or yourself needs peace of mind to have a year supply of daily meds. Go to jacemedical.com to see if it's offered for you. Use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Cruising on, final segment of the Locked On UCLA podcast, and probably the one we've all been waiting for, where, hey, the Chip show might need to come to an end. It certainly does. I've not seen maybe any people in the Chip Kelly bandwagon outside of deep trolls or people who are not truly publicly backing Chip Kelly, or they're hiding between their X/Twitter accounts or whatever it may be. The only person who I've seen still back Chip Kelly publicly, personally, is my dear friends in the Locked On Network, and I completely disagree with him. And that's also his bias, is because he's an Oregon fan, so we can understand the blind loyalty there. I love him; he does a great job, and of course, he brought up great points, dear Spencer, about the fact of, hey, what's the money situation? Hey, UCLA is growing; they were much worse. But then, as we saw Saturday night, if you were there and watched the majority of the football game, or even looked at the score, that was an abomination. Absolutely abomination. It's been a while since I felt that bad about a UCLA loss. There's losing heartbreakingly. There's losing frustratingly. Then there's that performance. That turd nugget just left at the Rose Bowl that should be never disgraced, ever, by any type of football game, any type of sporting event, anything that goes on in the Rose Bowl should not be ever having to see something so terrible again. That was not good. It was not. So what's next? Is there any way Chip Kelly could save his job with a win against USC? Wins in his next 3 games, and all of a sudden the Bruins have 9 wins. Again, they would have the same record as the year before, but we felt so much better about the 2022 Bruins, who had a much worse defense, but much more exciting offense. Bigger wins against Utah and Washington. And it took near disastrous end-of-game finishes that caused them to not get 10 wins in 2022. So are there any public backers? No, I don't believe so. I remember reading from Mark Schipper, who does Fifth Down College Football. He talked and tweeted most importantly, it's not looking like Chip Kelly is going to stick around. Eric Sondheimer, beloved LA Times Prep Sports, hey, he doesn't think Chip Kelly's going to stay. Bill Plaschke, who always likes to get riled up and put things in the LA Times, so you can take it with a grain of salt. It's time for Chip Kelly to go, and kind of poking more at Martin Germain, saying he's failed the last 2 years to get rid of him. I would put a lot more patience with UCLA's newer athletic director and saying now is the time more than ever, despite these extensions, to help recruits come in to make it happen. And yes, I understand the financial struggles and what's coming with the Big Ten. Yes, have the Bruins grown? But with Mark Schipper, even a UCLA alum in that his own fact, I know he's not trying to be as biased, but he talked about, not while revealing any sources, tweeted saying, hey, it's looking like win or lose, it doesn't matter, with player-coach feuds somewhat, what I saw from Mark Schipper tweeting it out. That's coming to surface. That's coming to light. The UCLA athletic department is a bit fed up now. And with the money and everything going towards UCLA with the Big Ten and a lot of optimism, hopefully in future years, everyone I talk to, I try to be positive with Chip as long as humanly possible, and I'm just frustrated. Absolutely frustrated. I wasn't as frustrated after the Arizona loss. I have a different mindset after the loss in Tucson. But after that Arizona State game, the way it happened, the frustrating thing how it happened, it's time to make it happen. Now, what Chip Kelly's been able to do is compete in games against USC, and by gosh darn gosh golly, he could win this game against SC, and he'll finish 3-3 in 6 years against USC. Think about that. Other coaches probably haven't had the same fate and same success against crosstown rivals. Now, a lot can be pointed to the fact that SC has been very much down with the Clay Helton years and the fact that, hey, UCLA is playing somewhat of an overachieving, overhyped SC team the last couple of years with Lincoln Riley, and their fans are having their own crisis about their D coordinator and their head coaching schemes with a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback leading their charge. And they sit there not having as good of a season as they would have liked. Here we are, UCLA. I think Chip Kelly could find a way to get a game plan to beat USC. There's a way against that horrible defense, even though there was no Colin Schilly reportedly at practice or Darius Moisow at practice. That two leading guys, one offensively and defensively, not at practice. This could be very ugly despite early projections at SU 6-point favorites. I could see a world where UCLA wins this game. It's not likely. It's not impossible. It's more likely than we want to give them credit for, especially if they come out and give a good effort. Both teams coming off frustrating losses for one reason or another. And if UCLA plays like Arizona State did, does anything and everything they have to do to win after a terrible loss, then the Bruins can come out and look inspired and do so. But if Mark Schipper tweeted out and said, win or lose, it's not going to save Chip Kelly's job, then that makes me a little more excited for this game. If a win, surprisingly enough, can save this game can save Chip Kelly's job, that's almost scary. That's scarier than usual most ugly scenarios that could happen in the Coliseum. And goodness gracious, there are many things that could happen in the Coliseum that are just terrible. So you want to hope that a win doesn't completely save the Chip Kelly era. You want them to beat SC, end Cal's bid for a bowl, win a bowl game, and on a good note, even though they have 9 wins, that's a best case scenario. Best case scenario. Even as I spew, get rid of someone's job, I still have the optimistic outlook. That's just naturally how I'm wired. What's next? Beat SC. That's all that matters. As cagey as Chip Kelly kind of was with the media scrum prior to the practice, whatever players might say, it's beat SC week. I saw Mark Colkin. He put pictures up. He's talking SC, UCLA 15. No. From henceforth, the rest of this week, until the game is over, or unless some report happens that Chip Kelly is fired or is going to be extended, there will be no talk about Chip Kelly's job status for the rest of this week. Because I'm going to dedicate this week to finding each and every way to talk crap, to find ways UCLA can win this game, to beat SC, because they need to get their asses handed to them in this game and just fully end their regular season on a huge thud. And UCLA's got to do it. How? After that ugly crap fest, whatever, I don't know. We're going to find ways to make it interesting. And if worse not, we're going to talk as much crap as humanly possible and say, go Bruins, baby. Because that is what's going to get us through the rest of this regular season and make it successful. Any year, even the early Chip Kelly years when they struggled and they had nothing going for them, what he had at least do for us, he beat that ugly team across town, which is why we're going to end the podcast with a dramatic tone like that. I'm Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer saying so long, beat SC, go Bruins. This has been Locked On UCLA, Bruins fans, 8 clap time, baby. I need it loud and proud. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA be that C. Suck it, Mark. Let's go, Bruins.